Hi, I'm Margaret Martin. Today on Melio Guide, we're going to discuss all the different principles that need to be part of a good exercise program when you're looking at building bones. The key principles for building bone are that your exercises have to be very intense. When I say very intense, that means when a client comes to see me and tells me that he or she is working out, and I say, well, how many sets and how many repetitions are you doing, with the number of repetitions being how many times that individual can lift the weight consecutively. And they say, well, I usually can get in, 12 to sometimes 15 repetitions, and if I really wanted to, I guess I could do 20 repetitions. Well, unfortunately, that is not intense enough. All the studies around building bone show that the intensity of your workout, the amount of weight, isn't so important as to how intense that weight feels when you're lifting the weight. So if you're doing an exercise and you can actually do more than 12 repetitions with the weight or with the amount of body weight that you've put onto the exercise, then it's too easy for building bone. Bone needs stimulus. The other thing is that in order to work as many bones as possible, you need to work as many muscles as possible. And you really want to target the muscles around the hip and the back because, as I mentioned in another tutorial, that's where we have a lot of cancellous bone. We need to stimulate the bone to keep it strong. We also know through numerous studies that weight bearing is far more effective at building bone than non-weight bearing. And what do I mean by that? Well, anything that loads your skeleton down where your own body weight, or using a weighted vest where you're actually making yourself heavier. When you land and you're actually feeling that pounding with every step, that's a weight bearing exercise. Swimming, elliptical work, cycling, these are considered non-weight bearing or lightly weight bearing. And so they're not loading enough to build your bone. If you like doing them, fine, but you need to incorporate some weight-bearing exercises into your week in order to ensure that you're stimulating your bone. And talking about stimulating your bones, well, they like to be kept on their toes, so you do need to vary your workouts. Some of the key features you should be looking at in a comprehensive exercise program, first and foremost, that it incorporates postural exercises. This is especially important if your own posture is not 100% where it should be. Having good posture and using your own head as your primary weight-bearing exercise is very important. You want to ensure that your head is resting well over your shoulders and over your hips so that you're not letting your head drop forward. So if you don't have perfect posture, you want to ensure that a comprehensive exercise program for you incorporates some postural exercises. Strength, as we talked about, needs to be intense and should be very varied. Balance is quite important, especially for individuals living in northern climates because of the ice and the snow, but having good balance will help ensure that you don't sustain a fall. Having a fall is usually one of the key reasons people actually fracture. Although flexibility is not a key feature in a comprehensive exercise program, I've placed it in here because doing flexibility exercises with good form is important, and having the flexibility to move well with good body mechanics is also very important. So flexibility exercises on their own do not help you build bone, but they do help you to move safely. So indirectly, they're protecting you from fractures. Lastly, and very importantly, cardiovascular programming. So that is really important in terms, not only do you want to be building bone and doing cardiovascular exercises in a weight-bearing format, but you want to be doing lots of different exercises. And so one thing that Melio Guide offers is suggestions for every level of fracture risk. When we look at how we build skeletal mass over our growing years, we see that the years around puberty And there's some interesting research where they look specifically at that. For girls, it's 11 to 13, and boys, somewhere around 12 to 14. Those are some of the most bone-building years that you'll ever have in your entire life. Somewhere in the area of 26% of bone accrual happens in those 2 years. And then you just can keep building bone as long as you're eating well and exercising hard through your early 20s, and somewhere around the age of 25 to 30 years of age, men and women reach their peak bone mass. Now, by looking at the graph, you think, well, it's all downhill after that. But it need not be. With regular exercise that's specific for bone building, you can reduce the decline of that slope. You can stave off or reduce the amount of bone loss in your latter years. And this can mean the difference of falling and picking yourself up, or falling and fracturing. Well, hope that this has been helpful. That's all for this session, and I'll see you next time on Melio Guide.